Greetings, comrades. I have had no real time to prepare any videos for this weekend. Perhaps tomorrow I'll be able to write something up and upload it in the night. I could do it now, but it's 10 o'clock. I'm pretty tired. I've had a full week's work, and to be honest, all I feel like doing is just going to sleep in a minute. So I'm probably going to indulge myself that tonight. But I don't want to let today pass without at least saying a few words about Armistice Day. Armistice Day is the anniversary of the signing of a peace treaty between the Entente, that is France, Britain, America later on in the war, their allies, Russia under the Tsar and the Provisional Government, and on the other side Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire. I believe that's all they had on their side. Like I say, my history memory has gone out the window today. But anyway, it was this treaty was signed on the 11th hour, or it came into effect anyway on the 11th hour of the 11th day, 1918, which was many years ago now. And in Britain, I don't know if they do this in any other country. I'm sure they celebrate it or remember it or whatever in their own way, but here the tradition is to mark the occasion is to wear one of those little red plastic poppies, which you can buy from, well, put it this way, on my way to work I encounter at least 4 people, 5 if you include the ones that actually sell at my work, and the money goes to some charity for soldiers. And it's at 11 o'clock we're all very quiet for 2 minutes, and then after that we go about our lives as normal. And it's basically that it's the poppy as a symbol is said to have come from red poppies, which apparently grew on the battlefields of World War I. But it's to celebrate or remember rather our soldiers who've died fighting for Britain, and I guess by extension the Allies, in all their wars. People interpret it different ways. Some people say it's soldiers who've died in all wars, but usually most of the people who say that in defence of pointing out the hypocrisy in their thinking behind the celebration. Now, I didn't wear the poppy. I didn't buy a poppy. I didn't give any money to the charity for the soldiers. I certainly didn't follow the example of Anjem Chowdhury and his soon-to-be, if not already defunct, Muslims Against Crusaders who burnt the poppy. I didn't wear it. I also, on the whole, didn't spend any time berating anyone over my thoughts on it. Now, I've got no objection, of course, to remembering the soldiers who've died. Soldiers, especially in those days, were very much workers. Even more so in the days of conscription. However, the reason I do not wear the poppy is because particularly give much acknowledgement to today, the 11th of November, Armistice Day, as I do not feel it is a adequate way of remembering the soldiers. And of course, this is partly because of another anniversary, which I was going to make a video, but I spent all my time ranting about Iran, which I guess wasn't very productive. But the other anniversary is the 7th of November, which marks the day of the October insurrection, named the October insurrection because in Russia they used a different calendar before this revolution. It marks the day that the Military Revolutionary Committee, which was most predominantly controlled by the Bolshevik Party, but also had members, including its head was a left socialist revolutionary. And that day is the day that Kerensky's government was kicked out of the Winter Palace, and the Congress of Soviets took place, under which the Bolsheviks and the left social revolutionaries, who were the only party who were willing to cooperate with them, and were clinging to the false illusion of a provisional government, they formed the Soviet government and basically created what was to become, for better or worse, unfortunately in the long run it seems to have been for the worse, the Soviet Union. Now, these are two very contrasting anniversaries, and I think it's quite fitting that they come quite close together. On Armistice Day, on that year, that was the year that the respective bourgeois sections of those two alliances decided that they'd had enough of fighting. That the Allies had won the war, and that they would get their hands on the spoils, and the Germans and the Austrians and the Hungarians and the bourgeoisies of the nations which came about of the dividing of the Ottoman Empire decided that to ensure their own limited what little independence and what survival they could have left, they decided to call the whole thing off. And graciously they decided that they would stop sending these young men, these young workers, into the line of each other's machine guns, out of the way of the poison gas canisters, of the shells that fell, the rifle fire, out of those muddy trenches, away from the barbed wire, away from the diseases, the fleas, the rats, the feces, away from the decomposing bodies of their friends and their fellow soldiers. They decided that now would be a good time for peace, 11th November, and so they granted that upon them. The day of the October insurrection, though, marks a very different day. It marks, with relation to the war, it marks the day when the workers of Russia and the Ukraine and the various other nations which would later constitute the Soviet Union, that was the day the workers decided that they weren't going to put themselves in front of the rifle fire of other workers. They weren't going to die for Kerensky, for the cadets, for the church, for the Tsarists, for the Kornilovists. That was the day they decided for themselves. And they put their faith in the only party which consistently opposed the war in any meaningful sense, the Bolshevik Party, and supported them as the Military Revolutionary Committee, who were made up, as I said, of Bolshevik members as well as left social revolutionaries who on that time were on the side of the revolution. They decided they would take the matter into their own hands, and that if they were going to die fighting in trenches, by machine gun fire, by shells and poison gas, they want to do it for themselves, not for the Rasputin clique, not for the rich, not for the landowners who'd oppress the peasants, not for the factory owners who tried to starve the workers into submission, not for the compromisers, for the Mensheviks, the right social revolutionaries, who talked of socialist revolution but defended capitalism and imperialism and the Entente to practically their last breath. Not for the cadets, who despised them anyway. There's a mutual despising on both sides. Those workers and peasants, that was the day they decided. They didn't ask for the permission of the bourgeoisie on that day, as they'd been asking for 8 months since the February Revolution, since the forming of the provisional government. They were tired of asking, and they laid down their arms. Or at least for a while, until the Entente took vengeance upon them. Until British, American, French, Japanese, Czechoslovakian soldiers were sent by the bourgeoisies of those countries to extract vengeance on the workers. Now, this is not a message I'm giving to disrespect any of the soldiers who died fighting the Kaiser, who later died fighting Hitler, or anything like that. Those are indeed worthy causes. I'm sure they fought with bravery, but it's at a time like this when people who weren't there feel it fitting to come up with their own interpretation, as I have done, of those wars. You know, of course, like with any idea, there is a mainstream of it, and a canon, if you will, and anyone who disagrees with that is made to feel like some form of heretic. Now, to take Anjem Choudhury, he's not just negating the principle behind why the majority of people in this country are wearing the poppy. He's going for the complete opposite. He's not just not respecting them. He's condemning those soldiers who he feels are basically crusaders in a war against Muslims, rather than, in my opinion, people who, many of them fight for the best of intentions, but they aren't fighting for themselves. But from what I understand, when most soldiers are in a combat zone anyway, they're not really thinking about whether they're fighting for democracy or even socialism or any other ideology in the heat of battle. They're probably fighting for survival and for the survival of their friends and their units. So my feeling is that rather than buying into the hypocrisy of saying, oh, they all fought for democracy, they fought for freedom, only to then be condemned and vilified and attacked if you choose not to wear the poppy, or if you decide to go further, if you decide to provocate people by burning the poppy, which I feel is a ridiculous move, which certainly doesn't achieve anything for Islam or anything else for that matter. It just kind of pisses people off and gives the EDL an excuse to go on a march. I feel that the best way to honour those fallen soldiers is to condemn the machine which sent them to their deaths. So remember the soldiers, but remember why they died. Remember who sent them to die. And remember that the ones who decided that they didn't want to die for those reasons were condemned as traitors, were thrown into prison, many of them were shot on the spot. The ones who'd had enough. The ones who felt that they had more in common with the man on the other side of the trench than the man giving them the orders, than the officer. So, yeah. Red salutes, comrades.